My name is Susan, and I am a 55-year-old company employee who has spent nearly 31 years living and working overseas. I moved abroad with my husband and daughter, building a life far from home. However, as time has passed, things have started to change. My daughter is now in her final year of college, and by next year, she will graduate. She dreams of working for a company in Germany, and lately, I have been wondering if it is time for me to return home as well. It's not just about my daughter's job. There are other things weighing on my mind. I have been struggling with decisions about my future, especially when it comes to my husband and our life together. Moving back to Germany feels like a big decision, one that I need to discuss with my parents. I have also been reflecting on my career, as I work at my father's company and have done so ever since I graduated from college nearly 31 years ago. After finishing my degree, I was sent to the US to manage our company's overseas branch. Our business mainly focused on exporting Germany goods, and despite being a relatively small branch with only a few experienced employees besides myself, it contributed significantly to the company's overall sales. Many of our customers were wealthy individuals who sought high-quality Germany products, which made our exports quite successful. One of the reasons my father chose me for the position was my strong language skills. Since I was fluent in multiple languages, he believed I would be the perfect person to oversee the U.S. branch and handle communication between our clients and headquarters. While our veteran employees managed the business negotiations, my main role was to serve as an interpreter and handle financial operations. It was a big responsibility, but I was determined to prove myself. Even before officially taking on the role, I had been preparing for my move while still in college. I worked closely with the employees who would be transferring to the U.S. with me, ensuring that everything was in place for the branch's operations. My parents had mixed feelings about my move. My mother, in particular, seemed anxious. I still remember the worried look on her face when she said, "Be careful." My brother, on the other hand, felt guilty that I was the one going instead of him. He had always believed that working abroad should have been his responsibility, but there was one major problem. He didn't speak a word of any foreign language. Knowing he couldn't take my place, he told me, I should be the one going, but I wouldn't survive without knowing the language. I'm counting on you to do well in my place. Although my brother wasn't an officer at the company back then, he now runs the business. Maybe that's why he felt so bad about sending me overseas. To make up for it, he tried to do something for me before I left. One day, he introduced me to a close friend of his, thinking it might help me feel less alone.
"This is Paul," he said.
He's been to the US a few times for work, so he knows what it's like there. I think you two would get along. I wasn't very interested at first. Dating didn't seem like a good idea when I was about to leave the country. I was already busy with work and preparations, and the thought of getting into a relationship at that time felt unnecessary. But when I met Paul, he surprised me. He was charming, easy to talk to, and had a refreshing personality. To my surprise, we had a lot in common. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and I found myself enjoying his company more than I had expected. I never realized how well my brother understood my taste in people until that moment. Slowly, I started to feel drawn to Paul. What began as a casual introduction turned into something more. We ended up dating for about 7 months before I officially moved overseas after graduating from college. Looking back, that decision shaped my entire life. Now, decades later, I find myself at another major crossroads. Do I stay where I am, or do I return home? The answer isn't simple, and as I stand on the edge of yet another big change, I can't help but wonder what the future holds. As I was preparing to set up our company's branch in the US, my life became incredibly busy. During that time, Paul and I saw each other almost every day. He had known from the beginning that I was going to move overseas, and despite that, we grew close. When our relationship became more serious, Paul brought up something unexpected. He told me he was thinking of moving to the US as well. At first, I was surprised, but his words made me happy. The idea of him being with me in a foreign country was reassuring, but I knew that because of work, I couldn't make any decisions based on emotions alone. Setting up the US branch was my top priority, and I couldn't let anything get in the way of that. One day, Paul excitedly told me, "A friend of mine works in the same city where you'll be living, Susan. I've been looking into jobs there too. I think I can make this work." Hearing how determined he was to be with me made my heart swell. Not only did Paul seem serious about our relationship, but he also seemed serious about building a future together. He even talked about marriage, and everything felt like it was falling into place. Things moved smoothly from that point on, and after much thought, Paul and I decided to get married. But not everyone was thrilled about it. My father, in particular, didn't seem pleased. "I don't know about this Paul guy," he said one evening, frowning. "He always knows exactly what to say, and something about that doesn't sit right with me." I tried to defend Paul, explaining how much he cared about me and how determined he was to be by my side, but my father wasn't convinced. Despite his concerns, my mother was more open-minded. She reassured him, saying, "Paul is a friend of our son. If he trusts him, then we should too." Eventually, my father gave in, and after dating for about a year, Paul and I got married. We had our wedding in Germany, surrounded by family and friends, and afterward, we moved to the US to start our new life together. Our honeymoon was spent exploring the country that we would soon call home, and everything felt like a dream. Once we settled in, things progressed well. Paul managed to find a job through a friend's company, and my work at the new branch went better than expected. Customers responded positively, and we quickly gained a strong reputation. I sent regular reports back to my father, keeping him updated on our progress. But despite my good news, my father still seemed uneasy. Every time we spoke, he would ask the same question. "Are you and Paul getting along okay? I heard he found a job there too, but is everything really all right?" No matter how many times I reassured him that we were doing well, he never seemed fully convinced. It was as if he had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. On the other hand, my brother, who had always supported my relationship, trusted Paul completely. He often told me, "If you ever need anything, just rely on me. I'm always here to help." For a while, life continued smoothly, and I had no reason to doubt Paul. But then, one day, I received an unexpected call from my brother. His voice was serious. "Susan, there's something you need to know," he said. "The company Paul used to work for in Germany went bankrupt." I was shocked. Paul had never mentioned anything about this before. My brother continued, explaining that there had been a major financial scandal. Apparently, someone within the company had been involved in accounting fraud, manipulating the financial records to hide stolen money. Since the books appeared accurate, no one noticed the problem until it was too late. The owner, who was a friend of my brother, had consulted him about the company's struggles, but the financial damage was too severe. Eventually, they had no choice but to shut the business down. The more I listened, the more uneasy I felt. Why hadn't Paul told me any of this? Did he know about the fraud? And if he did, was he involved? 1,000 questions flooded my mind, but one thing was clear. Paul had kept a huge secret from me. I quickly put the news out of my mind since we were both so busy with work. After moving to the US, we hardly ever went back to Germany. Instead, our parents and Paul's parents visited us. They worried about us and often came to check on us while traveling. They would stay for about a week, sightseeing and shopping while spending time with us. My brother also visited for work, and about 3 years after we had set up the branch, he made a comment that caught us off guard. "The branch is doing great," he said with a grin. "Maybe it's time you two started thinking about having kids." Paul turned red at his words, but to be honest, I had already been thinking about it. Not because of my brother's comment, but because it felt like the right time. A short while later, I found out I was pregnant. When I shared the news, both our parents were overjoyed. I wasn't sure whether to give birth in the US or go back to Germany. My mother, however, offered to come to the US and help out, which made the decision easier. Even if I had returned to Germany, the company would have been fine since we had experienced employees handling things there. But my mother felt it would be difficult for Paul to be left alone while I was away. Paul, on the other hand, didn't seem to agree. "It feels wrong to have your mother come all this way. Maybe it's better if you go back to Germany, Susan," he said more than once. Even after we decided that my mother would come, he kept bringing it up, insisting that it would be easier for me to give birth in Germany. As my due date got closer, my mother arrived to stay with us and help prepare for the baby's arrival. I was happy to have her there, but at the same time, I worried about my father being left alone. One day, while Paul was out, my mother spoke to me quietly. "Actually, your father told me to come and take care of you," she admitted. She explained that my father still didn't fully trust Paul. He was afraid that if I went back to Germany and left Paul alone in the US, he might cheat on me. My mother was worried about me too, so she didn't mind coming. She also liked the calm and pleasant weather here. Besides that, she had another reason for staying with me. She had been living with my brother and his wife, but their relationship was strained. She wanted a change of scenery and some time away from their tense home. She shared all of this with me, confiding in me about her true feelings. I understood why my father was worried. Paul was very friendly and got along easily with women, which sometimes made me feel uneasy. There were moments when I wondered if he might be unfaithful if left alone. Knowing that my father was keeping such a close watch on Paul reassured me. It showed that he still cared about me deeply. Eventually, I gave birth to our daughter safely. Paul's parents traveled all the way to the US to be there for her birth, which made me happy. My mother also stayed with us for 4 months to help take care of the baby. Paul was helpful during that time, so when my mother returned to Germany, she left everything in his hands, trusting that he would continue to support me. But the moment my mother left, everything changed. Paul, who had been helping with housework and childcare, suddenly stopped doing anything. "Please keep taking care of our daughter like you have been," I told him, frustrated. Instead of understanding, Paul snapped back at me. "I'm busy with work too. You're at home all day, so you should be able to handle it alone." His words hurt. He made it seem like I had nothing to do, but the truth was, I had already started working from home for the company while also caring for our daughter. I was just as busy as he was, if not more. But no matter how many times I tried to explain, Paul wouldn't listen. In the end, I had to take care of our daughter, do all the housework, and manage my job by myself. Just as my father had feared before we got married, I started losing trust in Paul. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. I managed by leaning on the friends I had made in the US, and with their help, I raised my daughter, Jessica. From a young age, Jessica often said and did things that surprised me. There were moments that left me speechless. Before she even turned 1, something strange happened. One day, she was smiling and waving at empty space, something she had never done before. I didn't think much of it at first, but later that day, I got a call from my mother. My grandmother had passed away. I froze. A strange thought crossed my mind. What if my grandmother had come to visit us one last time before passing? And what if Jessica could somehow see her? When I told Paul about it, he didn't take me seriously. "Jessica just waved by coincidence," he said, brushing it off. "That kind of thing isn't possible." At first, I agreed with him. But then, something even stranger happened. When Paul's grandfather passed away some time later, Jessica pointed outside the window and kept staring as if she saw something. We were living in a high-rise apartment, so there was nothing outside for her to be looking at. But she kept pointing, as if she was trying to tell me something. Not long after, we got a call with the news. Paul's grandfather had passed away. I was shocked. I wanted to say something about what Jessica had done, but I knew Paul would only make fun of me. So I kept silent. As Jessica grew older and started talking, she said even more strange things. One day, she looked at me with a serious face and said, "Uncle's baby is going to be a boy." I was surprised by Jessica's sudden words and asked her what she meant. She confidently said that my brother's family was going to have a baby boy. At that time, my sister-in-law hadn't even announced that she was pregnant, so I didn't believe it. But out of curiosity, I called my brother. When I told him, he was shocked. "How do you know that?" "My wife just told me today." At first, he didn't believe me when I hinted that the baby might be a boy. But months later, when my sister-in-law actually gave birth to a baby boy, my brother got scared. That's when I finally told him about Jessica's strange ability. Unlike Paul, who always dismissed it, my brother believed in her right away. He told me, "If Jessica ever says anything like this again, let me know immediately." As Jessica grew up, her mysterious ability didn't fade. Every now and then, she would say something unexpected, and later, it would turn out to be true. It wasn't like she could predict world events, but when it came to personal matters, She seemed to know things before they happened. When Jessica started looking for a job as an adult, she insisted on moving to Germany, but she never explained why. I didn't understand her reason, but I trusted her. She had always been different from the rest of us. Paul and I wanted her to stay in the US and find work here, but in the end, we decided to respect her decision. At the same time, I started thinking about my own future. The branch was running smoothly, and there were trusted employees who could take over my work. Returning to Germany started to feel like a real possibility. But when I brought it up, Paul immediately said, "I'm not coming back." Lately, our relationship had been strained. We barely spoke at home, and I started to wonder if separating wouldn't be such a bad idea. Since Jessica was going back to Germany for her job search, I thought it was the perfect time to talk to my parents and brother about my future. When I told Paul the first was thinking about leaving with Jessica, he actually seemed happy. "You don't have to come back. I'll stay here alone," he said, without hesitation. His response made it clear he understood what I was thinking, and he was fine with the idea of a divorce. It made me realize just how distant we had become over the past 31 years. When we first moved to the US, we had been so close, but now we were like strangers. I made my decision. I would go back to Germany with my daughter. At least for a while, I would stay at my parents' house and figure out my next steps. One day, while Jessica was out job hunting, I sat down with my parents and told them I was seriously considering divorcing Paul. They listened carefully and then told me, "Do what feels right for you." Their support made me feel much lighter, as if a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Feeling a little nostalgic, I took out some old photo albums and started flipping through them. There were pictures from our honeymoon, memories from when Paul and I were happy together. Just then, Jessica came home and noticed the pictures. She leaned over and looked curiously. "You and Dad were so close back then," she said softly. Without thinking, I spoke the truth out loud. As Jessica stared at the honeymoon photos, she suddenly muttered, "Dad is lying, Mom. He doesn't care about you at all." Her words caught me off guard. "What?" I asked, unsure if I had heard her correctly. Jessica trembled as she continued. With her strange ability, she revealed something shocking. "Dad married you and moved to the US to run away because he stole money from his company." My heart pounded. This couldn't be a joke. If what she said was true, it explained a lot. It reminded me of the accounting fraud at Paul's old company, the same one my brother had once mentioned. Could Paul really have been involved? At that moment, my brother, who was also home, looked just as shocked as I was. Then, Jessica handed us something that looked like a passbook or an old financial ledger. "I found this in Dad's room," she said. "It looks like proof of the fraud." I was stunned. Not only had she discovered this, but it almost felt like she had returned to expose Paul's past. Paul had never been very involved in parenting, so he and Jessica weren't close. That's why I wasn't too upset at the thought of him getting caught. No matter what happened to him next, I had already made up my mind to leave him. I was ready to rush to the police, but then I hesitated. The crime had happened 26 years ago. Wasn't it too late to do anything? Had the statute of limitations expired? That's when my brother spoke up, sharing something important. The statute of limitations stops counting while the person is abroad. Since Paul has been in the US all this time, the case should still be valid. Hearing this, I was about to go straight to the police when my brother stopped me. "Let's contact the owner of Paul's old company first. He was already trying to build a case about the fraud. He'll be happy to see this evidence." I decided to let my brother handle things. After a while, the police contacted us, and I handed over the passbook and ledger as evidence. I worried that Paul might find out, but there was no contact from him, and we didn't reach out to him either. Even though I had already decided to leave Paul, knowing the truth about his past felt like a punch to the stomach. I had spent so many years with this man, and now I realized he had been living a lie all along. But before I could process everything, Jessica revealed something else. "I came back to Germany because I didn't want to be around Dad," she said. "He's been cheating on you, Mom." I had my suspicions, but hearing it from my daughter made it real. "How do you know that?" I asked, my voice shaking. Jessica hesitated for a moment before saying, I've known for a long time. I just didn't know how to tell you." She had proof. She even had photos of Paul's affairs. Knowing that she had kept this painful secret for so long, afraid to tell me, made my heart ache. But more than that, it was terrifying to realize just how much Paul had been hiding from me all these years. As the police investigation continued, suspicion grew that Paul was involved in the accounting fraud. The police wanted to question him, but we knew he would never return willingly. My brother and I didn't know what to do until Jessica came up with a clever idea. "Tell him that Grandpa is seriously ill and we need to talk about his inheritance. He'll come back for sure," she suggested. She wasn't wrong. Paul had always been interested in what he might inherit after my father passed away. He had even asked me before how much I would receive. So, following Jessica's plan, I called Paul and told him that my father was in critical condition. Just as Jessica had predicted, Paul rushed back home without hesitation. When I met him at the airport, he greeted me with an eager expression and asked, "Has your father passed away already?" I stood there silently. The next moment, several police officers surrounded him. Realizing he had been tricked, Paul's face twisted in anger. He started shouting at me, "You tricked me? This is cowardly." I looked him in the eye and replied, "You've been deceiving me all along. And, on top of that, you've been cheating on me. That's what's truly disgraceful." After his arrest, Paul was confronted with the evidence of his financial crimes. At first, he admitted his guilt, thinking the statute of limitations had already expired. But when he realized it hadn't, he tried to take back his confession. It was too late. With Paul in custody, I hired a lawyer to handle the divorce, and finally, I was able to officially end my marriage to him. My brother, who had introduced us all those years ago, felt guilty and apologized many times. But I didn't blame him. He hadn't known what kind of person Paul really was. Now that I am divorced, I am also pursuing alimony. I've left everything in my lawyer's hands and just need to be patient as the process unfolds. Thanks to my daughter and the evidence we had, the case of the accounting fraud will finally be resolved. And with proof of Paul's infidelity, I am confident I will receive the support I deserve. One day, feeling curious, I asked Jessica if she knew who she would marry in the future. She smiled playfully and said, "I can see things about other people, but not about myself. Knowing my own future would make life boring, don't you think?" Her words made me laugh. Looking at my daughter, I realized that despite everything, I was no longer afraid of the future. I would continue to listen to her advice, and together, just the two of us, we would live a peaceful and happy life.